Hello, I'm Eirini Dimitriou. I'm a medical doctor, and I'm speaking with Christopher Drake, founder of Learn Buteyko Online, and the first Western practitioner to be given the red diploma from Professor Buteyko himself. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Eirini.
Christopher, I would like to speak today about epilepsy.
The first time I came across it, because when I started working, assisting my teacher, Alexander Stalmatsky, well, I knew epilepsy is some kind of seizure because everyone knows that, but it was nothing to do with us because we are only treating asthma. We didn't really target our marketing to other diseases. Although people with emphysema and COPD were also joining workshops because they take asthma medications. And on our forms, people had other diseases and they ticked the boxes. Epilepsy was one of them. Stalmatsky didn't tell me that the method is effective for the treatment of epilepsy. We didn't promote to that toward that disease. Consequently, we didn't really have any patients in which we were treating them for epilepsy. And it started when we were doing a workshop in Melbourne and someone had an epileptic attack in the workshop.
Oh.
It wasn't on the first day, and it was many years ago now, so I can't remember what day it was. Maybe day 3 or day 2 maybe, or whatever. But they began having a seizure, and we were in the middle of practicing. And Stalmatsky walked over to the person who was on the ground having this seizure and told him to do a maximum pause, breath holding. Fortunately, he already knew how to do because he'd already been practicing for some days. And the seizure stopped in 2 or 3 minutes. And then Stalmatsky, after the workshop, took him aside and I listened. And he said that when you get symptoms, you do pauses and overcome your seizures. You see, it turns out that this seizure is not so sudden. Asthma is not sudden. People give you the impression that it's very sudden, but an asthmatic already knows that his breathing is not good. He feels breathy, and he already would be aware that there's a strong possibility he will have some symptoms. There's no such thing as, from what I know, as some guy, he feels good, everything is fine, and then all of a sudden, boom, heart attack and drop dead. No. He's a bit breathless. He's irritable. Something is not right. He knows something is not right. And he becomes increasingly breathless. And then heart attack comes. But when it's written down, or when people tell their story, I'm not saying that they're being deceptive, but they're not saying, that, well, I was feeling not in a good mood somehow, a little bit breathless, a little bit sweaty, a little bit uncomfortable, some feeling of unease was growing, and epileptics apparently are in the same situation. It can happen suddenly in the sense that they feel unwell. They can begin to feel not good. And if it continues, it results in an epileptic attack and some spasms. So I remember Stalmatsky coaching this person with epilepsy, telling him how to overcome the epilepsy and how to get out of it. And that was my first experience around epilepsy. And since that time, because we knew how to manage it. And of course, I consulted with Stalmatsky in different cases to get his help and so forth. Yeah.
So it is clear for me that the epilepsy is reversible, something that the method can reverse. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's no epileptic who has a high control pause.
What's the kind of control pause that we need to treat epilepsy?
I don't think you're going to find anyone with a control pause of 30.
Okay, 30 and above.
Yeah, I mean, they might have other conditions.
Sure.
Like, these diseases are defense and compensation mechanism. They are like legs on a table. A four-legged table is more secure than a three-legged table.
Mm-hmm.
And a two-legged table, well, that's, not secure at all. And so the more genetic, if you have the genetic predisposition to get more diseases, the more stable you will be, in a sense, when there's a deficiency of, carbon dioxide. Mm-hmm. You'll have more illnesses, but you'll have more, the body has more mechanisms to defend and compensate for the improper level of CO2. Of course, you'll suffer more. Sure. And those people who have no defense mechanism, their control pause goes down. They feel fine. They don't have asthma. They don't have diabetes. They don't have any problem at all. And the only thing which happens to them is they just die. And Buteyko said they're the most dangerous people to deal with. Yes. And I saw it not many times. Young guy, well, young, 48, 50, whatever, and headache, no. Fatigue, no. Fit, yes. Heart problem, blood pressure, no. Everything fine, And then you check his control pause, 10 seconds. Buteyko said, that's dangerous. On the other hand, you've got some other person, they're overweight, toxins are being stored in their fat tissue, they have a bit of diabetes, a bit of migraine, they're a bit crazy, a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of arthritis, many other. So the body is using these symptoms to defend and compensate, spasming of vessels. I mean, what's asthma? You can't breathe. Yes. What happens when you can't breathe? Level of CO2 comes up.
Yes, like in sleep apnea also.
Same thing,
yes. Christopher,
so,
sorry. Yes.
Yeah, so epilepsy is a classic condition of spasming of vessels.
In the brain. Mm-hmm. What would you think is the role of anti-epileptic drugs? Because many patients, are medicated immediately when they're diagnosed. So what's our approach on that? How do we work to treat this?
That's you've got this carbamazepine, phentoin, valproic. I've actually got a list here. Lamotrine, gabapentin, topiramate, phenobarbital. They suppress the symptoms, and the problem is by suppressing the symptoms, the underlying cause is not addressed, obviously. And if the organism can't get satisfaction from exercising that series of defense and compensation mechanisms, it will look for another place. So, you know, you suppress the symptoms of epilepsy and you develop something else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we have to reduce the medication just to the point that they get a little bit of symptom, and they use the method to overcome the symptom, and then the medication is reduced again. So actually they have to get in the habit of overcoming the symptoms with using the method, using maximum pauses to rescue until the underlying condition is addressed. Mm-hmm. And so if they take, it's a golden rule almost, any medication which ameliorates all symptoms completely, it's usually overdose.
Yes.
So the correct dose is where you get some little symptom, but not much. Mm-hmm. You know, if you take blood pressure medication and your blood pressure goes perfectly to normal, well, maybe you're overdosing.
Yes.
And if you're overdosing, you can really develop some other problems. Mm-hmm. If you take a blood pressure medication and your blood pressure is a little bit high, that's a smarter way.
Smarter dose, yes.
Yeah,
smarter titration.
Smarter dose. Mm-hmm. So what we normally have to do, and there's a great deal of prejudice because, I mean, when a person has a seizure, it's a very scary, horrible, embarrassing, humiliating event for other people, not just the person involved. It can seem very alarming. So, you know, you usually, the students I've worked with epilepsy, the ones who have treated other diseases, they had migraine or they had Crohn's disease or they had asthma, and they already learned something about the method, you know, how it works. So they're not scared because they saw the cause and effect of the elevation of CO2 to ameliorate symptoms. Mm-hmm. They understand how medications work, or they have a better feel for it. So, you know, usually the medications are overdosed if they're not having any symptoms. And so we very gradually, with the cooperation of their doctor, reduce a little bit, see what happens. Nothing, reduce again. And a little bit by little bit until such time as there are some symptoms. And when those symptoms manifest, you use the method to overcome the symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Usually we reduce medication as they elevate the CO2 level. So it's like we're substituting their
Correct.
medication. And also about a little bit of symptom in in epilepsy. Do we mean these symptoms that we get before the fit itself, or some kind of spasm? Because I've heard and I've listened from some specialists that the seizure itself, the grand mal, let's say, it's taxing on the brain. I mean, it's not, it produces some kind of problem in the brain if someone has a lot of symptoms like that. So when we say they have a little symptom, what exactly do we mean?
Well, they have, that's why I explained earlier that they're not sitting and smiling, relaxed and happy, and all of a sudden epilepsy comes. No.
So they may avoid completely the crisis.
Yeah, I mean, like they start to feel something wrong first. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They feel like a little, and the symptoms vary. And some people, epilepsy is just a part of the repertoire of diseases they have.
Yes.
They got asthma, diabetes, blocked nose, chronic fatigue, or this or that, you know, migraines, and also epilepsy is also lurking there.
Yes.
So you start to reduce a little bit, and then their epileptic condition deteriorates, but just to the degree which they can easily overcome. So they start, those feelings start, they do a few pauses, they feel fine. And now they're at that level, and then after a while, those symptoms don't return. And now they only require that dose to maintain stability. And then you repeat, you again reduce again the medication a little bit and use the method to overcome the symptoms. But they have to have quite good scores. You know, it's not, first you have to develop good scores before you can start to play. You cannot learn this method and whilst you're learning it, try to treat epilepsy.
Yes, as you said, they need to have a control pause of 30, so they need big maximum pauses. Yes.
Well, you know, big maximum pauses, or maybe 28 is enough. Maybe, who knows? Yes. It depends where their control pause started. You know, and also then, if they're practicing a lot, sometimes the practice can provoke some feelings of epilepsy. And yet, when they're not, if they're not practicing, epilepsy symptoms can arise apparently spontaneously. So they need to not over practice to provoke attacks, and they need to practice enough so that when symptoms do arise, they can arrest them. And so some balance. It's sort of like you're in a boxing ring, you don't punch unless you think your fist is going to connect. You don't just sort of do like this and the guy is standing too far away, you know. If you are not, it's not so much over practicing, but you can practice a lot, and then because you pushed up the level of CO2, the comparative drop later may result in some symptoms arising. So that's why you have to have someone objective who is watching your scores, watching your symptoms, and watching your practice, because you have to anticipate times in which symptoms can be elevated. And you have to watch the other diseases. If they have other diseases, what's going on with them, you know? So it needs careful observation of the student, which is difficult for them to do by themselves because of the objective-subjective principle.
Right.
I forgot to mention, these epileptic medications, they may suppress the symptoms, but they reduce your quality of life a lot.
Yes.
So if people might say, oh, I can manage not to have symptoms by taking this medication. No, it comes at a big cost. The quality of your life, and that can take various forms. You know, you're a bit, other symptoms can occur because of the medications. You can become a little dull. You're not quite, you know, you don't have the vigor that you should have, and so forth. So don't be under a false impression that you can take this medication and not have epilepsy symptoms without any cost. The cost is big, and it will be the quality of your life and the tendency toward other symptoms which may appear unrelated.
Yes, and the diagnosis starts sometimes in childhood. It's not always, you know, in adulthood with other symptoms. Sometimes a child is diagnosed with that.
Yes. Well, it's well known. I mean, sometimes they grow out of it, like asthma, and they didn't really grow out of the cause. The body changed to deal with that deficiency. So, you know, it's like, oh, no, I had asthma as a child and the asthma went away. And then when that went away, diabetes started after a short time, you know, then it started, sugar drops started and this and that. Or the person started to gain weight or become mentally dull or any number of other issues.
Great. Thank you very much, Christopher.
You're welcome.